Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne Tungate, Executive Vice President of Global Strategy at World Business Chicago. In this role, I'm also lucky to be the Executive Director of Chicago Sister Cities International. Thank you for joining this month's Discover Our Sister Cities conversation. It's really great to see some of our members here, our Pakistani partners, and some new guests in the audience. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are new, Discover is a monthly series that showcases unique topics from around Chicago's 29 international sister cities. And I'm thrilled that today we have a wonderful panel of guests joining us from Lahore, Pakistan, the city of gardens. Thank you for being here today to showcase all of the amazing things happening in Lahore. At Sister Cities, our volunteers are the driving force of our mission and help to connect Chicago with our overseas partners. I'd like to thank the Lahore Committee in Chicago and acknowledge our co-chairs, Dr. Butt and Dr. Malhans, the Tariq Dream Team. Thank you for all that you do to promote the relationship between Chicago and Lahore, and for your work putting together today's program. In addition to creating connections between cultures, promoting peace and understanding between Chicago and Pakistan, you both do so much on behalf of the people of Chicago. And it's a pleasure and an honor to work with you. I'd like to introduce Dr. Butt, who is just really an amazing individual and leader in Chicago. In addition to his work with sister cities, he's been at the forefront of bringing testing and vaccines to Chicago's most vulnerable communities. And we're very lucky to be able to claim him as a Chicagoan. Dr. Butt.
Good afternoon, Adrienne and distinguished audience. Thanks for that generous introduction. And Chicago Lahore is a very special bond. And Adrienne, thanks for all the things you have been doing. And honorable guests, this is a great afternoon in Chicago. I know it's almost like 10 p.m. Lahore time, but you are here for an amazing journey to discover heart of Pakistan, Lahore. Without any further delay, I would like to thank our Chicago Committee of Lahore Chair, Hamza Nasir, and Hamza will take you through beautiful gardens of Lahore and much, much more. So without any further delay, Hamza Nasir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's my honor and privilege to represent my birth city, that's Lahore. My name is Hamza. I'm a marketeer. I run a digital agency, and I'm going to be talking about Lahore today. Lahore is the capital city of the province of Punjab, the second largest by metropolitan city area, and the 18th most populous city in the world. With the rich history dating back over a millennium, Lahore is the main cultural center of the Punjab region, as well as Pakistan, and is the largest Punjabi city in the world. It remains an economic, political, transportation, entertainment, and educational hub of Pakistan. And yet one can only be cognizant that every metropolis seems to have been enshrined in two images. The first one is created out of the big city's old grandiose buildings, citadels, forts, tombs, mosques, churches, gardens, roads, and rivers, etc., which is usually preserved by historians. The second one is an ensemble of numerous accounts, descriptions, and narrations made by poets, travelers, and story writers. What you see on your screen right now says Khush Amdeed and Ji Ayano in Urdu, as well as in Punjabi, our local languages, which essentially means, you're welcome. Welcome to Lahore. From a historian's eyes, you can see that they capture barren yet factual features of a city, while poets and fiction writers' imagination hunt for a lively ethos of a life of a city. These two images might appear contrasting, but they're not necessarily contradictory. Rather, they can supplement each other in a bid to paint the full picture of a real metropolis. In almost all books, the historical account of Lahore begins with the original foundation of Lahore, the actual word, Lo Avar, from Sanskrit word avar or fort. And this was almost always attributed to Lav or Lo, one of the sons of the legendary Rama. This has been ruled by Hindu kings, Mughal emperors, Sikh monarchs, and British sovereigns. And this brief introduction seems to account for the variegated historical heritage of the city that I represent, which is Lahore. Now, man has always been in search of beauty, finding an ultimate purpose of things and essentially their destiny. However, one's imagination keeps strolling in the mysterious world of the past, the present, and the future, sometimes contrasting the past with the present and vice versa. The search of beauty is mostly found within nature. And this brings me to what Lahore is more popularly known as, which is the City of Gardens. Now, many gardens have been built in Lahore during the Mughal era, some of which still survive. The Shalimar Gardens, for example, were laid out during the reign of Shah Jahan, and they mimic the Islamic paradise of the afterlife as described in the holy book, the Quran. Another example is the Bagh-e-Jinnah, 141-hectare botanical garden, which houses entertainment and sports facilities, as well as two of Lahore's largest libraries. Now, these gardens tend to follow the familiar Char Bagh layout, which is essentially 4 squares with 3 descending terraces. And this is essentially Persian and Indo-Persian quadrilateral garden layout based on the 4 gardens again, which are mentioned as paradise, again mentioned in the holy book, the Quran. But instead of trying to conquer this etymology myself, I would like to hereby introduce my dear friend and colleague, Hina Irfan, to tell us more about Lahore's grandiose architecture. Hina?
Thank you, Hamza. That was a wonderful presentation on the gardens. And if we talk about Lahore, it is a city that is over 2,000 years old. And there's plenty of ground to cover when talking about the architecture of Lahore. The city has seen many changes in leadership: Hindu royalty, Mughal kings, Sikh rulers, and British colonizers. Through each mode of governance, buildings and public spaces were commissioned and at times appropriated to make Lahore modern. Now, with a population exceeding 11 million and the subsequent development of a service sector, we see changes to the city that are infrastructural, flyovers or signal-free corridors, as well as the inclusion of tall buildings. Somehow, the last decade has seen a spike in cafes and restaurants catering to international cuisine, perhaps a consequence of increased exposure to international media. Therefore, to keep things brief, when describing the architecture of Lahore, these are the frames that are being considered. Next slide, please. Chaz, previous slide. Thank you. The areas highlighted are the walled city, Gulberg, and the canal. Road networks have enabled expansion to take place from the walled city. Bound by India on the north and Ravi River on the east, the spread took place primarily towards the south and the west. Areas around walled city have similar closely packed houses and narrow streets. Model town was developed considering the Garden City movement. Areas to the southwest consist of gated communities. These are low-density housing societies that cater to those who can afford it. Therefore, revisions to the master plan are required to make Lahore a compact city. Population growth needs to be considered by the development of housing on infill sites and leftover areas. Next slide, please. Connected roofs in the inner city served as informal meeting spaces. They facilitated takiyas, which are gatherings centered around storytelling and socializing. Rooftops also maintained a connection with the street. Dwellings in and around the inner city had courtyards with windows opening inwards. Hence, they were able to maintain their privacy. As we look towards newer developments, the social aspect has been replaced by more private forms of entertainment. Front gardens and terraces are not really social spaces. They are ornamental at best. Next slide, please. A dominant part of the city is the canal. Spanning almost the entire length of Lahore, the 60-kilometer-long irrigation canal was initially built by the Mughals, but then upgraded by the British. It has since turned into a roadway, but the banks are used as public space for washing and cooling off in the summer. Floats are displayed to mark festivals, accompanied by impressive lighting arrangements. With careful design interventions, it may have a lot of potential. Ecology is a sensitive thing, and the trees planted there support a variety of bird species. Next slide, please. So now we move towards the center. We approach Gulberg. It is a high-end residential area that is now becoming more commercialized. Considered the center point of the city, there are plans for numerous high-rise apartment buildings and visions of this becoming the new downtown. As the old gets replaced with the new, economic disparity may be exacerbated. The Liberty Market and other bazaars will probably give way to air-conditioned malls. Next slide, please. And if we consider the Lahori high-rise building, it is a scaled-up version of building responses to the climate that includes shading, high thermal mass cladding materials, and north-facing glass facades. Next slide, please. Finally, when considering the way forward, it is important to understand where we came from. The Wall City Lahore Authority and the Aga Khan Development Network are working in conjunction to restore buildings of significant cultural and historical value. On the left is the picture wall in Lahore Fort, which was commenced by Emperor Jahangir in 1624. The tile mosaic is adorned with scenes of hunting, fighting, and dancing. The art in Persian is known as Kashikari. On the right is a view of Badshah Mosque, which was commissioned by Aurangzeb in 1671. It is an important example of Mughal architecture with an exterior that is decorated with carved red sandstone. It was the largest mosque in the world for over 300 years. This is merely a glimpse of Lahore's architecture because these are physical remnants of history that are deeply tied to the socio-political forces of the time. Lahore has been a hub for trade and commerce. It was a city that catered to people from diverse religious backgrounds. It has been invaded and plundered multiple times. As a resident of the city, I see it expanding, evolving, and I try to reconcile this with its rich history by understanding the past and then planning for the future. And this concludes this segment. Thank you very much. And I will now hand it off to Michelle Jacob to present on education.
Thank you, Hina. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Jacob, and I head the Office of Marketing and Communications at Common Christian College, which is a chartered university in Lahore. And today I will share a few things about the education sector in Lahore. Lahore is a historic seat of learning with some of the country's oldest and most prominent universities and schools situated here. It is recognized as a hub of education in Pakistan with centuries-old traditions of education and enlightenment, with the history of education tracing its origins back to the 7th century. The empires and dynasties that ruled Lahore over the centuries propagated education, with many rulers taking up poetry and prose writing as hobbies and employing scribes to record history. However, the arrival of the British in the subcontinent and the missionaries that accompanied them began a new era of education in the region, with many schools and colleges founded by them, making education accessible for the masses. One such institution is Foreman Christian College, which I represent. It was founded by an American missionary, Dr. Charles W. Foreman, to educate the youth of this region. Today, Lahore maintains its reputation as a center for quality education in Pakistan. Lahore boasts over 6,500 private and public sector schools and over 40 universities and colleges, both vocational and academic. The education sector is front and center in the public discourse and is also one of the fastest growing sectors of the Pakistani economy. Over the past few years, some new trends have also emerged in this sector. The most prominent among them is the increase in the number of female students attending college, students wishing to enroll in skill-based education programs and degrees, and obtaining an education that equips them with professional skills. Next slide, please. To match the need of the hour, educational institutions in Lahore have undergone an evolutionary process to adapt to the demands of the local and international job markets and the students who pass through their halls. Universities are now increasingly focusing on innovation and technology with a huge importance placed on entrepreneurship, idea incubation centers, new learning methodologies, and much more. The government has also established regulatory bodies at the state and federal levels to ensure that standards are maintained for research, academia, and student welfare. Next slide, please. Educational institutions are also increasingly aware of students' needs to engage in activities outside the classroom that engage and enrich them. To this end, schools and colleges alike are introducing extracurricular activities and programs. Drama, debates, music, sports, foreign languages, and arts are incorporated into the students' routines to provide a healthy balance between academics and extracurriculars. Next slide, please. At my institution, Forman Christian College, we offer a wide range of opportunities to our students to grow and reach their full potential, alongside an academically robust, American-style liberal arts education program. We welcome over 7,000 students from all backgrounds and regions of Pakistan and abroad to a university where they grow and learn and meet some of the greatest thinkers in their chosen disciplines. We also offer an engaging student life experience that equips our students with critical thinking and interpersonal skills. We place special emphasis on our female students with the goal to bring the enrollment of female students to 50% of the total student population. A 349-bed dorm for female students, funded by USAID, was inaugurated in 2014 on campus to reach this goal. Next slide, please. I will conclude by saying that while we have come a long way in the education sector in Lahore, with the sector evolving and growing with the times, and though COVID has greatly changed the landscape of the education sector, both educators and students have risen to the challenge. We are confident that with the continued integration of technology, innovation, and new learning methodologies in education, the sector will continue to make inroads into the future. Thank you very much for your time. I will now hand it off to Anil Ghosh, who will tell you a little bit about commerce in Lahore. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Anil Ghosh. I'm the Marketing and Communications Officer in Forman Christian College, a fellow colleague of Michelle. I would talk about commerce in Lahore and its very close connection to the business sector. Lahore, with a population of more than 12 million people, it is definitely a lively city, and it certainly lives up to its reputation. The main attraction of the city is its beautiful architecture. Like Hina said earlier, the architecture stands out, and it's something that makes Lahore a very peaceful, a very attractive place to visit. But it also has a very, very large markets and bustling bazaars, which actually are dated back to the Mughal Empire as well, and even far beyond that. Lahore is a leading commercial, banking, and one of the industrial centers of the country. Although the textile industry happens to be the single most important and the largest industry in Pakistan, but Lahore certainly has its fair share of industries, as there are many rubber factories, as well as iron, steel, and other mills in Lahore that makes it a bustling city of business. Next slide, please. This sort of a business environment or a business structure was not new to Lahore. Historically, Lahore was inhabited by great and rich merchants whose business spread across the whole subcontinent, and even beyond that. There were key trades to the areas of Kabul, Kashmir, Persia, and etc. The vibrancy of Lahore Bazaar was unmatched even in the Mughal era, and even it's still today, it stands out. That makes it a very, very inhabited and a very attractive place to visit, as each bazaar has its own significance, and there is a separate bazaar for each commodity where merchants are in a safe sanctuary today. And even in the Mughal Empire, the city acted as an important production center, as all kinds of merchants would do business and contribute towards the economy of the city. The walled city of Lahore has multiple markets such as fish, cloth, birds, gemstone, and even pepper. These are some of the main markets that stand out in Lahore. Although the actual structure of Lahore was confined within the 12 gates of Lahore, which are famously, as Lahore is known as the walled city. But now Lahore is actually expanded outside of that walled infrastructure. And it is actually rapidly going into the business sector and matching the very fast-paced business of the current modern era. Next slide, please. As Lahore made its presence felt in the business sector every day of the year, it is almost the same identical business, you can say, presence during the night as well. As Lahore is very famous for its vibrant and a very refreshing nightlife. This mainly consists of food, because Lahoris all across the world are famous for being food lovers. When it comes to food, Lahoris are the one who actually know what food is. And it's something that we cherish and we actually celebrate every day, even if we're having lunch or even having dinner or even breakfast. It is something that is part of us. It is something that's inside of us. It's a love of food. So every day and night, people work and trade business, even if it's during day, if it's during night, if it's night, mainly people come out to shop with their family and friends, spend time with their family and friends. And the center of main planning, or you can say in our term, the whole idea of meeting together it would revolve around food. So family and friends spend time together to enjoy the very vast, diverse, you can say, options of Lahori food that we have here. Our culture naturally brings people together. So, and also we're famous for our hospitality and livelihood. And when it's coupled with the love of food, it is a combination that is a match made in heaven, to be honest. There are various food vendors, restaurants, and even shopping malls these days have food courts. Because if a food court is not in a shopping mall, it is actually looked down upon in a way that this shopping mall actually didn't consist of you can say a food court. So what we're going to eat when we come out for shopping. So having a food court and having a place to eat is the main center of attraction at night, or even when you're outside, and even in Lahore. Markets stay open till midnight to accommodate people as they do business of selling food. Also, shopping malls and restaurants stay late, open late and do business after 12 or after midnight. Mainly what they do is they actually offer only deliveries, home delivery services. So the food connection is there. There are vibrant vendors who actually have their shops open 24/7. So they serve breakfast, they serve lunch, they serve dinner, and then the dinner stays available till late at night, but then they start prepping up for breakfast again in the morning for the next day. So that's how close-knit we are when it comes to food. And people here and people, you can say, all around the world say that if there's one business that cannot go out in Lahore, it's the food business. Because if you know your food right, your business will never be, you can say, will go down a very bad lane in a way, because food is what Lahore is. That's what our main attraction is. So next slide, please. As you can say, when I was talking about business during day and night, but that's one part of the Lahore, but there is also an industrial sector to Lahore that actually is playing its part to the economic structure of the city. Nowadays, the city has a very diversified base span of telecommunication, information technology, manufacturing industries, engineering, pharmaceutical, steel, chemical, and construction materials. Lahore has a very, very vast, effective railway and air services that actually link it to other major cities of Pakistan. This eventually makes the tourism and trading expand to other cities and also to other countries possible as well. There is a Sundar industrial estate in Lahore. It is a purpose-built facility for various industries with more than over 450 factories currently operational there. The facility also operates a dry port that actually keeps a regulatory check on all the trade that's coming in and coming out of Lahore. We also have a very state-of-the-art expo center that provides the right platform to the businesses here to showcase their products and also services for their local buyers and also for their international buyers as well. Next slide, please. So in the early 2000s, working in a call center in Lahore or in Pakistan or working in an IT company would imply that you're working in an outsourced job. And that is something that has changed with time. People brought in changes to the business sector in Lahore and as multiple foreign companies like Airlift, Uber, Careem, Nestle, Coca-Cola, etc. are starting to operate in Lahore. And the resources, the workforce of people of Lahore are not being outsourced, which is a major economic shift of the city as well as the country, as they're not only investing in Lahore, they're also investing in the country as in the whole unit. As Lahore made changes in its business sector, it certainly made its way in being prominent business hub, which was brought in by the younger generation, which went through our changed education structure that Michelle actually pointed out earlier in her part when she was explaining the education sector of Lahore. So keeping that in mind, in the end, I would actually say that even though in this tough time of this COVID pandemic, the business sector of Lahore actually understood the need of the hour and brought reforms in its structure, thanks to the, you can say, the out-of-the-box thinkers of business, decision makers, entrepreneurs. They actually stepped up to the challenge of working remotely and successfully. And they were able to do it successfully and were able to meet it to continue to contribute towards the world, to the Lahore's economy. When the world was actually shutting down, Lahore was actually facing a similar strict COVID restrictions, but it actually stood up to the challenge and came up with the ways on how they can continue to run their business, run their trade, so that people can have a very willful earnings of their livelihood. They used online platforms, they utilized Facebook, they used WhatsApp, e-commerce websites such as AliExpress, Foodpanda, Alibaba, Airlift Express are named some of the companies that were used to do business. In the end, I would actually like to say that even though the business and the industrial sector was actually blooming as well, the food sector was also there playing its part as local vendors and restaurants moved to these apps and virtual banking, which allowed them to run their businesses even from the closed doors, as they offered home delivery services across the city 24 hours a day. And in the end, I would say that Lahore stood out with its ideas and other cities as well. But Lahore was famous for since it was famous for its hospitality and welcoming nature. So it was certainly ready for the change, and it made the change welcome for the people. And in the end, I would say that I would conclude by finally saying that Lahore is certainly ready for the fast-paced international business sector, as people here are equipped with the right knowledge and skill required, and that is coupled with our deep roots to the business, the mindset that we have to make things work, to make things happen, that makes us goal-oriented. So thank you very much. Now I would hand it over to Mariam, who would actually explain our love for food and festivals here in Lahore. So Mariam, here you go.
Thank you, Anil. And this brings us, hello everyone, this is Mariam, and this brings us to the exciting part of the presentation. Explain the food as an extremely essential part of our culture, and it is used to express a range wide of our emotions. Whether you want to reconnect with your families, you want to get introduced to someone new, or you want to know a person more better, you just invite them over a meal, and that's how you get to bond over food. Now, let's take a quick look into the history of the food. Well, most of you know that Pakistan is comparatively a younger country, but the land area that is occupied by Pakistan traces back as 9,000 years ago. It's the home to some of the oldest civilizations in the world, Mesopotamian and the Indus Valley civilizations. So, you know, there's a strong influence of who occupied Pakistan over different times. So the food has influence, and that's how it got influenced and evolved. Moving on, I think there are two notable references that we look if we look in the history, which was actually considered as the Pakistani food, Pakistani cuisine. Back in the 8th century, when Islam spread to Pakistan, the consumption of coke and alcohol was forbidden, and that led to exploring other food options like other meats and drinks. The other development that took place in the Pakistani cuisine was in the 16th century with the arrivals of the Mongols, and their empire being, how they were rich with their food choices, and they really took food seriously. So some of the creations which still exist, like the biryani or the shahi tukras or the pilau, and the style of cooking, the dum pokh, is evident and has gained a lot of popularity in today's scene. Next slide, please. All right, now this slide that you see right in front of you is a scene from the Akbari Mandi. Akbari Mandi is basically one of the biggest spice markets of the Asia. It has, as you step into the Akbari Mandi in the old Lahore, you can actually see a pavilion of display of these beautiful colors of spices, and the aroma is so strong. So it's a touch of nostalgia as you step into it, and you feel like you're standing in the olden times. This is named after the Mughal emperor, and the third Mughal emperor, the Akbar. And we also have the grain market that he had established back then, which still exists. Now, you can see in this particular till date, this bazaar is flooding with a lot of activity where traders come in, spices come in, and they are exported. We have about 500 spice shops in this place in Old Delhi Gate. Now, necessarily, the choice of spices is what enhances the flavors of the Pakistani food. A lot of, now, typically we are in the hot area. So Lahore is a hot region. So, hotter the region, hotter the food that Lahoris identify themselves with. I also want to tell you, though, Lahoris are very loud people. They have loud choices about everything. So they like pomp and show about a lot of things. So they like the food. They're very particular about their food, and that's how they get a lot of ingredients to incorporate the complex flavors. The common ingredients that are used in our cuisines are the black pepper, paprika, cardamom, coriander, garlic, ginger, nuts, poppy seeds is very special, almonds and nuts. Again, a lot of influence from the Mughal culture. Now I'm going to take you over what a typical Lahori breakfast is. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you see around here on your left side is a typical representation of a Lahori breakfast, which consists of puri, that's a bread. It's a fried bread made of flour. And then you have halwa, which is semolina, sweetened semolina. And then you have chane, which are like the chickpeas, spicy chickpeas. They're like spicy chickpeas curry. And you also have it with pickle. And this is washed down with lassi. Lassi is a sweetened yogurt that you have it. So it's very, as you can see, that's a lot of fried food. But Lahoris manage. It's actually they're so passionate about it that they have it every alternative days, or typically every Sunday when they celebrate. On the middle of the screen, you have the nihari. It's a slow-cooked lamb shank beef stew with bone marrow in it. Again, they have it with the naan, which is a naan bread, which is made of flour and made in the clay oven called the tandoor. Also, we have the murk chane, which is on the third side, or typically the chanas, as the chickpeas are the lot of curries. So they make them with eggs, they call the chana anda, or they make it with the chicken, they call murg chana, and they also have it typically with a naan. So Lahori breakfast is, as you can see, is really, really heavy. Moving on, we can move on to some street food. Please, can you please change the slide? All right, now, no, previous one, please. Let's go to the previous one. Yes, here, yeah. Okay, I've got a lot of visuals here. Now I just want to explain you, if we want to trace down the traditional food of Lahore, we can go to Gawal Mandi, which is again a food street based in the older city of Lahore. And the second picture that you see here of the white sweetened yogurt is the lassi. That is a daily staple drink for all the Lahoris. They have it every day, almost. We also have street food consist of, bun palastar. That's a street food that's got egg and a patty, which is made of lentils. And then we have katlamme. We have that's a deep fried Pakistani version of pizza. And we have golgappe. They are little, that's on your extreme right screen, right side of your screen. They're filled with vegetables and lentils, and they're dunked in tangy and sweet water. And then you just, have it. The challenge is you do not get them out of your mouth. So that's an experience in itself. We also have the Lahori, kulfa and the faluda, and everyone is aware of the chicken tikka, but faluda is something which is a dessert. It has very thick, creamy ice cream, which is called kulfa, which is made of rose water and pistachios and milk and cream. And then you have a sweet syrup and some vermicellis to have it with it. So that consists of faluda. Now, moving on, we've got the evolution of Pakistani, the Lahori food. So all these food are typically found inside the old Lahore. As you move outside the city, you find a lot of modern forms of food that have been replacing. You have the franchises, and then a lot of street cafes which are taking place. Now, it is interesting to note that entrepreneurship has been kicking off in Pakistan, and we have a lot of young people who have traveled to different parts of the world, bringing back that culture, infusing it with Pakistani food. And you have new cafes popping up, and cheesecake culture, or be it Nutella or desserts. So that's very exciting. So you can get the best of both the worlds in Lahore. They actually have a very good choice when it comes to food. Lahoris also take pride in passing on their recipes and while creating culture food. So they are. I would closely compare them with maybe Italians. They're very possessive about how the recipes are passed from one family to another, and they keep their recipes as a tradition and as a heritage that is passed on. Next slide, please. All right, now coming on to the festivals. Well, where there is food, there has to be merrymaking. So we are talking about Lahore festivals. Now, it's interesting to note that in Lahore particularly, we have had festivals which were existent because a majority of the Hindus before partition resided in Lahore, was part of India, which is not there anymore now. But a lot of culture is influenced by the Indian culture. So for instance, Jashn Bahar. Jashn Bahara is typically a spring festival, and it's the Basant. Now, this celebration takes place to welcome the spring. By Jan or Feb, we had this festival. The sky was full of kites. The kite industry thrived on this festival. People made kites. There were special strings, and then you could actually see the sky painted with colorful kites of different shapes and sizes.
Sometimes people also wrote a message, you know, on the kites to the higher it flew, and then you had those competitions where someone's flying a kite and you kind of cut their kites and it falls. So there were competitions and stuff like that. Now there were a few incidents after which these things actually stopped. The government banned them because of the population. So that was one of very exciting festival, and everyone wore saffron to or yellow color to welcome the spring and to mark the beginning of the spring. Next slide, please. All right, now Dhamal. So Dhamal is, you would know that Pakistan has a very rich Sufi culture. So Dhamal, Babashah Jamal was again a Sufi saint who resided in Lahore, and his devotees to give him a patronage or tribute, they would typically mark every time they would mark a day to mark this in his memory. And the dhol that you see on your left picture, where people just go mad on the beat of the dhol and they keep whirling, and that is the tribute that they give to Babashah Jamal. So that dance of going round and round with the dhol is known as Dhamal. Next slide, please. So Fez was a very famous poet, and he was an Urdu poet, and we have the Fez MFS Festival to mark his legacy and to keep it alive, because he has contributed a lot to the Urdu literature. Now, since this festival has started with a lot of poets and singers and activists come and read out his work and keep his legacy alive. We also have people coming in from the subcontinent, and I think it's just a very beautiful way of exchanging thoughts, because you have the same way of communicating through the Urdu literature. So this is added a lot to the help in reviving the Urdu literature across the globe and keeping it alive. Next slide, please. Okay, Meenakshiraga is again a festival which is related to a Sufi saint. He was a Madhulal Hussain. He was a saint who was again in the 16th century very famous. And Ranjit Singh, Maharaj Ranjit Singh, who was the ruler of Lahore at that time, had marked the festival because people used to again commemorate or pay tribute to this saint. So it's called the Festival of Lights. They light the festival and there's fire and they dance and pay tribute to Madhulal Hussain. It's a very interesting festival. As you can see in the first left side of your picture, it's a ring of fire and there got people around. You're celebrating the spirit, people lighting up the lamps for their wishes. Once they're completed, they would stop lighting the lamps. Next slide, please. Okay, so National Horse and Cattle Show is a very interesting concept. So initially the army started this project to facilitate the farmers and to take care of the livestock and encourage them. Over the period of time, this became an annual ritual, and farmers and other participants from all around, they participated in it. So it became an activity to learn from how they are supposed to maintain or invest in their livestock. So you have interesting things like the dog show, you have the tent pegging activities, and the cattle show, and the camels dancing, and the folklore and folk music and activities. It's usually held in the third week of November for 5 days. And next slide, please. All right, currently taking place is the Daata Gujrat Urs. Again, Daata Gujrat is one of the Sufi saint, which is acknowledged by the we people of Pakistan. There's a holiday to mark this because people come in volumes, thousands of Muslims. They come onto the shrine and they pay tribute to Daata Darbar. And this actually, I think this was held about 2 days ago. So everything's like jam-packed, and people again come on, wish upon, and to fulfill their wishes, and they pray and they celebrate. Eid Milad al-Nabi is the birthday of the Prophet, of the Holy Prophet, and it's marked across the Lahore, like the other Muslim countries. The mosques are decorated, people come on streets, and it's just like another festival of Eid. So people come in all forms. All I like to say is people of Lahore are very festive. They would like to celebrate any occasion that takes place. Though the traditions have changed, and there were many more festivals that we might have lost in the history because we were not celebrating. There were security conditions earlier, but which have improved, and the festivals are coming back. And with COVID, we really hope after COVID we're back to getting back to gatherings and getting back to our festivals and doing it in a more appropriate manner. Thank you. That's all from my side. Thank you. Over to you, Hamza.
Thank you, Mariam. I appreciate the insights. As you can tell, Lahore is serious about its food. And by the way, if anyone in Chicago wants to get the real taste of Lahori delicacies in Chicago itself, Dr. Tariq Bug will be your guiding light. Perhaps we can set up the Taste of Lahore in the Lahori Garden, and that's something we can do next year. So just to quickly cover up what we've been through so far, I just wanted to focus on a couple of points. One, Lahore's been instrumental in generating funds for seed rounds for startups mainly. Just compared to last year in 2020, we raised about $56 million in the latest startups that we created. And just within 2021, the number is around 300 million already, which means Lahore is ready for business, and it is actually getting recognized by the rest of the world. This is just some of the names of the main centers where these accelerators are creating activities for entrepreneurs. And this is from Lahore to the world, telling them and exclaiming that they're ready for business. Next slide. Just to cover things up in conclusion, I want to start with the Lahore, the one statement that you keep on listening in the streets of Lahore, which essentially mean that whoever has not seen Lahore has not essentially lived. The possible reason behind this is probably the friendly, open-hearted, and welcoming nature of Lahoris, with their music, festivals, language, art, literature, cuisines, and whatnot. Lahoris are a unique breed. Like many other places in Pakistan, Lahoris are also known for being very hospitable, to the extent that Lahoris take hospitality to the next level and go out of their way to make you feel at home while having a great time. And more often than not, they'll put your comfort before their own. To finally summarize this, I'm just going to read this, which is in Urdu. Shahar Lahore teri raunak-e daim abad, teri galiyon ki hawa khinch ke lai mujhko, which means, O city of Lahore, may your liveliness perpetuate forever. The breeze of your streets allured me to be settled here. Thank you so much for listening in. This is Lahore handing the reign back over to Chicago.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chaz McCullough, Program Manager with Chicago Sister Cities International. I want to thank all of the speakers for their time and their wonderful insights, and we will now begin the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. We have about 5 minutes for questions. Okay. From your conversations with people from other regions of Pakistan and other countries, what are some misconceptions about Lahore?
Hamza, do you want to take that question? So I think that, yeah, go ahead, Hamza, please.
Sure, absolutely. So I guess the first and the foremost consideration that comes into people's mind I believe is bad marketing, and that's why I'm in that business. So I guess the mindset of what people imagine these places to be versus what the actuality is could not be further apart. So I guess one of the core misconceptions would be of safety, and in terms of the overall lifestyle and the openness to acceptance of people of different religions. Unless if you were here, again, there was no way to recognize it, or unless if somebody hired us to market them well. I guess those are the core at which people believe that what, they should not be traveling here, or it's very cumbersome in order to get in, and there's too many policies. The truth is, with the latest government that we have, they've eased it out. You could actually, for the most part, get a visa on arrival. It is one of the safest places that you can think of, and the city is more welcoming than you can imagine. I mean, just go to YouTube and look it up. We actually literally go out of our way to show that we are indeed the most hospitable people on earth. So I guess that would be the core. And beyond that, I guess you have to be here in order to experience the actual versus the virtual. So that's how I would summarize it for the most part.
Thank you for sharing, Hamza. We have another question. They are wondering if the kite festivals will be revived and if it is on the agenda for the lobbyist.
So I would say that this is, sorry, go ahead, Maria.
Right. I think they did revive this about a couple of years ago again, but then again, it was COVID. And the government was looking towards it because there was a lot of force, because it, pressure on reviving the festival of Basant. And hopefully, once it's revived, I think you all should come in here to experience it. It's one of the best festivals ever.
Thank you for sharing. One more question. How has the emergence of malls affected markets?
Hamza, you want to take it? Or
I would like to take that. I would like to take that question. I would like to take that question. In my view, I don't think the emergence of malls have actually, you could say targeted any business in any way. It's just that Lahore has to transform and stay with the modern world. People nowadays are now moving towards shopping from a mall, but the actual raw material and the actual things are being bought from the main traders that are in the old bazaars in the markets of Lahore. So the business is doing a whole 360 cycle. If somebody wants to buy something from a mall, he or she is more than welcome to go there. But that same item that could be bought and actually could be purchased from a market or a bazaar in the old city as well, as we do have these traders who actually provided to different, we can say, businesses, who actually help different industries in a way that they have the product with them. They actually sell it independently as well. So emergence of, you can say, a shopping mall is not damaging. It's actually giving more opportunities to, you can say, investors and to business owners that, they still have an option of having to trade in the inner city, and they can actually move out of the, you can say, their traditional markets and bazaars and actually go to a more, you can say, a modern area of Lahore that's just like Hina said, like Gulberg, or you can say the Canal area, that's a little more established, who are now becoming a commercial areas. So they can actually trade business there as well. So it's actually a doubling the opportunity to do business, in my view.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to wrap up the Q&A session there. I want to thank everyone for all of the wonderful questions. I'd like to ask Dr. Tariq Butt, co-chair of the Lahore Committee, to say a few closing words. Thank you.
So thanks very much. I think to all the panelists, let's give them a round of applause. They did a wonderful job. Hamza, Hina, Michelle, Anil, and Mariam, they took us through Lahore's gardens, architecture, educational institutions, food. Food is love. You saw that, emphasis on food. There's, it's an amazing culture, mingling of many, many civilizations and religions. So it's 9,000-year-old city, and we are only 200 plus years. So we have light years to catch up with Lahore. But I would like to thank Chicago Committee of Lahore for this beautiful presentation. I was moved. I really want to go there right away. And, I should have my travel bags ready. At the same time, I want to thank everybody who joined. Thanks to Chicago Sister Cities and Adrian Tongate and every one of you who did a wonderful job, and all the distinguished audience who joined us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Butt, and thank you to the panelists today. I agree that while sharing virtually isn't quite the same as being there, you've done an amazing job of sharing the amazing vibrancy of Lahore. And I will be the first to sign up for a trip where we can experience the festivals and the amazing food. I'd also like to thank Dr. Butt and the Lahore Committee, both here in Chicago and in Lahore. The mission of Sister Cities is driven by our volunteers who help connect people by sharing culture, education, and business exchanges. So we appreciate all that you do. If any of you are interested in signing up to be a volunteer with Chicago Sister Cities International, we'll drop a link in the chat where you can find more information about how to do that. And I'd also like to invite all of you to join us next month for our Discover Osaka series, where we'll explore the shared history of comedy in Chicago and Osaka, which, like Chicago, also has one of the biggest comedy training centers in Japan. So please join us next month. And until then, I hope you have a lovely afternoon and evening to our folks in Pakistan. Thank you.